Did you know you're going to lose 20 IQ points going through divorce, and you're going to be asked to make some of the most important decisions of your life? Let's even those stakes. Hi, my name is Victoria Kirilloff, and I am a certified divorce financial analyst and a family financial mediator. I founded Divorce Analytics after I used financial analysis to leave my highly abusive partner. I was terrified. After 10 years of abuse, I was mentally a wreck, and I could not figure out how to emotionally uncouple from him. There was a domestic violence incident that proved to me I needed to figure it out quick, and that's when I sat down at our computer and really leaned into what I know best, financial analysis and numbers. Being a nerd, essentially. And so I mapped out what it was going to look like for us to uncouple, and I was able to move from that place of being frozen in fear to empowered and ferocious. It is my goal to help my clients make that jump as well. Divorce does not have to suck. It's going to be painful. It's going to be a lot of decisions like a rock and a hard place. But with the right support team and financial analysis, you will be able to step into your power. Now, this video is for general educational purposes. It is not legal, financial, tax, any type of advice, right? My whole goal is to help you become better informed so you can then hire your own divorce team to prepare for the future. With that out of the way, I would like to discuss why divorce feels so overwhelming. Now, a lot of people enter into a marriage and they don't understand that this is actually the beginning of their personal business contract with their spouse. When you submit that certificate of marriage, that is really the founding document of your business. Now, as you are going through a divorce, you have to take stock in the business. You have to figure out what do you own, what you owe, and who's going to get what and who's paying. And if you have children, that involves another contract called the parenting plan and the custodial agreement. And it is with this two-pronged approach that you have to look at your divorce. Now, it is so challenging because a lot of us are still going through the cycles of grief. As I mentioned earlier, you are going to lose 20 IQ points according to studies during the divorce process. It is not because it is a small task, right? Your entire life is upending. It is just as stressful, if not more, if you actually lost a spouse. I like to say, in death, they have the dignity to die. In a divorce, that SOB continues to live, and now you have to negotiate with him. And that, all by its own, is overwhelming. But then you couple together those unresolved financial feelings that all of us have, whether it is from inherited family patterns or what we've picked up along the way, it becomes emotionally overwrought. And that's where people have a tendency to throw in the towel, to go through the process numb. And that is a sure way to set your post-divorce life up for failure. Now, it's going to take concerted effort, but if you build out your team, and if you break the divorce process down into each phase that is impacting your life, you will be able to convert that overwhelm into production. When you are navigating the divorce process, you're going to go through the 5 stages of grief. That is grief, bargaining, acceptance, anger, and denial. Now, when you are going throughout this, it's not like Monopoly where you hit one and then go on to the other. They have a tendency to all roll in together until you finally come to acceptance. And it can be even more challenging if you are the person who didn't request the divorce. What I have noticed in my practice is that people who request the divorce, they have, made up their mind years in advance. And it's actually by the time that they tell the other person, they are all the way through the stages of grief on to acceptance and living their best life, or whatever that looks like in that moment. On the other hand, the other person who didn't realize the divorce was going to happen, they are caught unaware. Even with everything that I went through with Voldemort, I will never forget. I had packed up, my belongings from our house, and my moving truck was there, and Voldemort was crying on the floor, saying, "I can't believe you finally left me. You actually left me." I'm like, well, you did choke me, bro. Not going to stay around for that. So you can never really underestimate somebody's cognitive dissonance. So it is really important to just be mindful of where your spouse is in the process, especially if you are going to attempt to do mediation. But it can be very helpful to bring on a certified divorce coach or a family therapist or a couples counselor to help each person really handle those emotions, show up to the business end of the deal, which are the finances and the legal phase, with the best chance to have success. After you go through the social phase of divorce, you are now going to enter into the business end, as I said, the finances and the legal phase. Now, finances tend to be very scary because a lot of us do have those unresolved financial feelings. And you have to keep in mind, divorce is like a messed up group project, and you have to be the one to build the proposal. So, depending on where what state you live in, it'll be called something different, but regardless of where you are, there is the impetus for a full financial disclosure, aka what do you own? And this is not just what the marriage owns, but what the separate property is as well. And so when you begin to enter into this financial phase, you have to fill out, in California, there are 2 forms. It's called the Schedule of Assets and Debts, FL 142, and the Income and Expense Declaration, FL 150, aka your balance sheet and your budget. Every other state has something similar, but this is really where the process kicks off. And what most people get wrong is they use estimations. I am a spousal support specialist. My favorite thing to do is to maximize spousal support using data, because there is no sweeter verification and validation as to what the data states. And so obviously, in some cases where there's not a lot of income, there's going to be a decrease in lifestyle for each person. But if you can wrap your arms around what this is going to look like, you're actually able to use the budgetary analysis to build out the spousal support amount. So you're able really to look through that lens of real world applications. Because I gotta tell you, there are going to be so many different ways for your divorce to get caught off track and derailed. It's when people have unrealistic financial expectations and they do not know their numbers. That is what leads to the biggest dust-ups and pauses in the divorce. And also somebody not disclosing information, which will be a topic for another day. After you have prepared your financial affidavit information, you submit it and you file it, or you give it to the other person, but now you're not done. You actually need to take it a step further, build out a property division proposal. Now, a property division proposal outlines what the total marital estate value is, aka what was earned during the marriage up into the date of separation. If somebody had a retirement account that they started prior to marriage, you have to actually go get that information. This is where it can be frustrating. A lot of financial institutions only keep data for the last 7 years. So you might have to do some forensic accounting and analysis to figure out what the date of marriage balance was on that premarital account. So that's not impossible. I do that all the time. In divorce, it's like any other lawsuit, and you need to have documentation to substantiate the claim. So that's another key topic. Whoever is making the claim, it is on their shoulders to provide the proof. So going back to spousal support, I had one case, God love him. My client's husband, he was a fairly wealthy individual, and he was made wealthy based off of their marital business. They had a high-flying lifestyle, and she received $4,000 a month in just spending money from him. And then his assistant took care of all of the credit card bills and the mortgage. And so they were pretty far removed from the actual day-to-day financial operations of their household. So going through the negotiation process, he just threw out a number, and what did he pick? $4,000, because that's what he was doing before. In actuality, this wasn't even enough to cover their mortgage. When I conducted my historical analysis, I found that her spousal support need was actually closer to $30,000. We were then able to show, using an income analysis, that he could actually afford this. He was making like over $100,000 a month. Now, I know not everyone is in that position, but it really highlights how people just have no idea, right? In his mind, he thought he was giving her a fair deal because that's what worked during their marriage. Well, you know, that little cognitive dissonance and being willfully blind, he thought that it was going to carry her post-divorce. And so this is really where I was able to step into this conversation. It had been going on for 5 or 6 years, and I put together the analysis, and we were able to have a deal relatively quickly. And guess what we settled on? $25,000. Now, not everyone's going to have a situation like that, but the most important thing that you guys know is that the best way to set your settlement up for success is to build a proposal that puts you into a good position. Now, I always like to say that in divorce, everybody ends up in third place. No one's in first, no one's in fifth, and definitely no one is in seventh. It is all about creating a win-win outcome. And in order to create a win-win outcome, you absolutely need to know your numbers. Numbers are going to enable you to know what a good settlement is. Let's say, going back to that example, if my client, let's say, you know, when he did offer $4,000 a month, it was easy to say no. Not only because it was insulting, because it was so clearly not going to fulfill her needs. And it wasn't until she actually had the analysis in front of her that she could actually know. She's like, okay, instead of 4, I need more. And, negotiating from that perspective. Instead, I have found so many businessmen especially, but so many couples navigating a divorce, they do it from opposite perspectives. Now, this is just what I've seen. It may or may not be true in your household, but for the most part, men have a tendency to attack the finances of the problem first, the operations. Women, we tend to lead with our feelings, and we want to feel good about everything before we move on. And so that then flows into the divorce dynamic where, we want emotional validation and closure and some type of maybe apology. Unfortunately, the divorce process, and especially the court system, is not set up for that at all. And if you have that expectation and hope that you will get some type of emotional consideration, it can be a very expensive road trying to litigate that out. So that's really, really important. If you are aware of how your spouse's mind works, if they're not good with the emotions, but they're good with the numbers, then lean into that and then get a good divorce coach to help you deal with those frustration feelings, because it's not going to be easy, right? You are being forced to be essentially the bigger person to do all the group work, and then they're going to crap all over it. But that's when you have different types of proposals, which we'll talk about in another video. Divorce is all about the nuance of the deal and being able to set the proposal up to, just like when you're trying to, I was going to use a horse analogy, when you're trying to get a cow to go through a tight chute, you have to use a little mental mind games, a little jujitsu, and that's exactly what this is. So I really encourage you to lean into the financial feelings. I know it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to evoke some negative historical, unresolved financial feelings, but the more that you can work through those, understand what your financial numbers are, you can show up to negotiation and have your future self thank you in the end. If you found value in this content, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. If you are going through a divorce or navigating that, I would be happy to spend 30 minutes with you. I offer free 30-minute consultations. You can sign up at divorceanalytics.com. Thank you so much, and stay sassy, everybody.